Hey everyone, so today we're gonna try a new thing here on this channel, and we're gonna spend up to 1 hour, depends on how many questions we'll have, and we're gonna chat. I will answer your questions, and we're gonna get to know each other a bit better. So I see that there are at least 14 people right now, maybe more, I don't know. And what would be your questions? I see your comments in the chat. Hey everyone. So what would you like to talk about today? I've already brewed some tea. I hope you did the same. So let's see how it goes. Before you ask me any questions, I want to ask you, can you write in the chat, where are you from? I would like to know from what countries do people watch my channel. Okay, I see first questions about GraphQL, styling React, CSS versus CSS in JS. We can start with that. So my preference is CSS and JS, and I actually like to use, let me actually open something. Turkey, Brazil, Bosnia, Belgium. What it's like to work in Mojang. Actually, it's great. I worked in Dice before, and before that I worked in TopTal, and before that I worked in Israeli company Mindojo, and before that in a bunch of Russian companies. And so far Mojang was the best, to be honest. First of all, because of people who work there. I never had such an understanding and emotionally connected atmosphere, so it's really great. About the CSS and JS versus CSS styles, thing is that in Mojang we actually use Bootstrap. I can tell you what I'm working on right now. MinecraftDungeons.net. That's what I work today. So we're doing this website where we sell dungeons. You probably know if you follow Mojang and what do they do. It's now Mojang Studios, and they not only have Mojang, but they also have Minecraft Dungeons. So it's kind of a hack and slash like Diablo style, but more casual kind of game. So all that is actually written in, not all that, I'm not being too precise. So the thing is, a lot of these things are done in React. So for example, this cart component that shows when you add something to the cart. So when I click the add to cart button, the number here goes up. And I think it's a great use case for React. Basically the same, it's the reason why React exists in the first place. When Facebook needed to synchronize the amount of notifications in the messages and in the bar in the bottom, they invented React to be able to control UI. So this is exactly what we're doing here. We have those buttons that get disabled when you click on them, and also they get saved. They're being shown as this notification thingy in the cart. Thanks for your help with React Hook Form. Actually, yeah, I'm really trying to push out more videos about React Hook Form, because I really believe that this is the best library nowadays to work with forms in React. I worked with a bunch of them. I worked with React Final Form, and I do not recommend using it. I think the closest competitor is Formic. It's sort of decent, but still React Hook Form is way easier to use. So when we switched from React Final Form to React Hook Form, this was the greatest change of last year. It is easier to test, it is easier to maintain, you write less code, and it's easier to understand. So I really like it. How to style Material UI with styled components. I'd like to use them more, but styling of it is not too documented, and how to mix it with your custom components example, right, with styled components. So this would require a demo, and I don't really want to write code today. But it's a good idea to record the video about, to show how to use Material UI with styled components. I actually have a video how I use Material UI, and there maybe I would be able to find it in the workspace. CD, where am I? Let's see. Maybe it's this repo, maybe some other repo, but I remember that I have a video where I use Material UI, and there what I do, I think it's in the Ultimate Form Challenge. Have you watched this video where I basically show the most complex form, including all the form features that I could come up with in one application? Form challenge. So this is the code from that video, and for example, no, that's not a very good example, but for example, an input, nope. Yeah, something with styles. So I prefer, when I work with Material UI, I prefer to just use the native styles to Material UI, the styling option that they provide, which is make styles hook, or here it is a factory that creates a hook. And then I isolate every component that needs to be styled into a separate file, a separate component. We have quite a few comments now. How to make drag and drop in React.js? Okay, that's an interesting question. I cannot suggest. I don't have a good suggestion for now. So there is this library called what is the name of it? It's one of the big ones. Yeah, React.dnd pops up the first. So you probably know that I wrote a book about React and TypeScript. Actually, you can download the free chapter, and this will be Trello clone. And in this Trello clone, you can drag and drop the items. So if you want to learn how to use React.dnd in React and implement drag and drop, you can download the free chapter of this book, and it will include the first one, building Trello clone. Thing is that during my work on this chapter, and when I was building the application using React.dnd, I really disliked this library because it's very complex and it's hard to wrap your head around it. But so far I haven't tried any other libraries. So you can try following this tutorial here on newline.co full-stack React with TypeScript and try to recreate the Trello clone. But again, you might not like this library like I did. And then, yeah, I don't have any better suggestion, unfortunately, because I haven't tried any other libraries. What is next? Can we focus the input element if we use set error to set an error coming from an API during using React hook form? Yeah, you probably will have to use the use effect hook and watch the change of some variable that you can get some value from the form, and then you can automatically trigger focus on that element using refs. Where do you recommend learning React best practices? I don't really like to I don't really like the approach of learning best practices. It might sound weird because like what else would you learn? The worst practices, but I think it's better to develop a sort of hacker mindset and try to find out on your own like why this or that thing don't work too well. To learn to think about it and reason, because thinking in terms of best practices sort of limits your potential. An example of it was not of limiting potential, but of reasoning about what you're doing. When I was learning to drive the car, it was back like 7 or 8 years ago, back when I lived in Russia. The driving coach asked me to vocalize, to tell what I'm doing and why. So for example, if I see the stop sign, then I stop. So before I would do anything, he wanted me to say what am I gonna do and why. And of course I was doing everything very slowly. But this is a very good practice to, instead of just blindly repeating whatever you read in some articles, and often they don't even explain why should you do this or that. They just say this is bad, don't do it. And it might not be the ultimate truth. It's better to get used to thinking about your task in terms of requirements, what exactly needs to be done. So for example, we are making a slider and it needs to be quantified by some rules. So for example, every 5 units, it needs to like jump between them when you release it. That's a requirement. And then what kind of limitations do we have? So for example, I don't know, it should not, I don't know, it shouldn't use some external libraries or something like this. And then you will have to find a solution instead of like, what is the best practice of doing it? Or if you find some good best practice, then it's good if it really has a good explanation, because sometimes if you read deep enough, you'll understand that it's not a general rule and it applies only in certain circumstances. And anyway, it requires to... So good reasoning comes before best practices. That's what I want to say. I usually... Oh, wait a second. I've missed some comments. Okay. Are you usually working with custom for backend related stuff, DBAuth, or do you prefer Firebase? I think Firebase is great for like small startups during their bootstrap phase, because then you're basically locking in Firebase. It's not too easy to migrate to something else, but it's cheaper. You don't have to have a dedicated team to work with your database. You don't have to have the infrastructure team. But in big projects, and for example in Mojang where I work right now, of course we have a dedicated team to work with databases, deploys, and everything, authentication and stuff like that. So it depends. It's not really a matter of preference. It's just it's an economical decision. Like, do you have resources to support database and such, or you want to save some money? Because essentially what Firebase is doing, it's saving money. It also makes using Yoop for form validation easy as well. Yeah, I do agree. It's really easy to validate your form using Yoop. Able to switch all my forms in my app to in a week, and all my input log issues went away. Very happy for you. Drag and drop with sorting, save in DB. So drag and drop, yes, this example that I was talking about, Trello clone, it actually includes a simple backend, like really primitive Node.js app that allows you to save the current state, and it saves the positions of dragged elements. So I do recommend, if you want to learn about drag and drop and how to implement it, read it up. It's quite big. It's, I don't know, maybe almost 100 pages. But yeah, it explains how to work with drag and drop. What structure you recommend using in React with TypeScript? I always struggle organizing my projects in TS. Okay, maybe I will even be able to show it somehow. Wait a second. So if you worked with backend frameworks, or maybe you worked with Backbone, even though it's quite an old front-end framework, you might be used to structure which separates the files, which groups the files by the type. So for example, you put the models in one folder, you put controllers in another folder, you put view models in the third folder, and so on. I don't really like it. I don't like how it scales, and I prefer to group the items by their by the unit of functionality. Let me try CD full stack React TypeScript. I'm going to show you another chapter from the book, just because it has a big enough example. I cannot show you some real projects, but this is as close as it can get. CD manuscript code 02 testing CD completed. So let's open it in the editor. And the application here is a store, is an online store. So it has a cart page, checkout page, home page, order summary page, and that's it. So as you can see, I'm grouping the files by the functionality. So for example, if it's a separate page, then it has a dedicated folder. Then I might have only one component there. Oh, wait, it's a test. I might have only one component there. That is this order summary page. Or like maybe home page, yeah, it can have a bunch of components. I don't really like to break it into too many folders. I mean, like the nesting shouldn't be too deep. It's going to be hard to navigate. So I usually try to keep it one level of depth if possible. If not, then maybe two at max, but usually it's just one level. And then if I have something that is going to be reused, I have the shared folder. And I also usually just don't put the tests in the tests folder, because it makes it hard to understand which files are tested and which ones are not. So here, for example, you can instantly see that loader already has the spec file for it. Header already has it as well. And for example, here I have cart widget that required additional assets. This is second level of nesting, because otherwise it would be too messy, because I needed the cart.svg, or why is it not previewing it? Doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah, it has an asset, so it was cleaner to put it into a separate folder. So I hope it answers that question. The book is great, thank you. React DND, yeah, exactly, React DND, and I don't really like this library. Are you excited about Minecraft 1.17? Yeah, probably. I don't play that much. This day I'm way too busy. I'm writing the second book right now and working on a course about React. So too busy to be excited about new releases of games. I've seen you using React testing library. What are your thoughts on React testing with Jest and Enzyme? I'm gonna be quick here. I don't like Enzyme because the API is way too big and it's very hard to remember what kind of functions are there. I really like React testing library because it has a system of naming the functions, so it's easier to grasp. And also so that's the first thing. You learn the pattern, you learn the system of how do they name the items. So for example, they have get by, find by, and find all by and get all by. This is the prefix, and then suffixes can be by text. For example, get by text, find by text, and so on. So you have some structure that is easier to remember and then use in your applications. In Enzyme, I really struggle to remember the names of the functions. And also Enzyme was not really enforcing the good practices because it had this thing, shallow render, that I think a lot of developers back then wrote a lot of tests that did not test much. React testing library has this approach of being as close to the way that the user will use the application as possible, so you actually test what is would be rendered in the browser, which is better. You will be closer to reality in your tests. So I prefer Jest with React testing library. I'm always thinking about best practice being newbie. Yeah, this is common because you want to know how to do things the best way possible and such. But again, like I'm not disregarding them completely, but I would recommend focusing on really learning to reason about stuff. It's better to reason about things and be wrong and talk to people and find out why are you wrong, rather than blindly picking up the good practices. So that's my point. Can you talk about exhaustive depths warning? Is it really necessary? Why? What happens when you ignore it? Because in some cases you don't want to add some dependencies in that use effect. Thing about use effect and exhaustive depths, it's the warning is not always true. Sometimes this is exactly the behavior that you want. You don't want the prop to update, but it might just be confusing if you have such an agreement that you have all those dependencies in use effect. I think the biggest bummer with use effect for me is that I used to think about use effect as a substitute for component did mount, and then if you return a function from use effect, I thought it will be executed when component will be unmounted. Thing is that this is true only if the dependencies array that you pass as the second argument is empty. If you have any dependencies there, the function that you return from this effect will be executed on every component re-render. So that was a surprise for me when I found out how it works, even though it's written in documentation. So that's my bad that I didn't read it carefully enough. Can the solid principles be applied to React even though it doesn't follow the OOP approach? I would not say that React is not following the OOP approach. It's just React is... oh my god, I forgot the word. What I was going to say. React is not using as many, like on the surface, React, when you write React application, it does not require you to use too many of the known OOP patterns, but it still stays the object-oriented program. It's just, it has the component-based architecture. So the point is that you can read it up later. It's quite interesting. Just Google component-based architecture. It was a thing. It comes from object-oriented programming, where instead of having different kinds of things like views, controllers, and such that communicate between each other, you have a tree of same level of same kind of abstraction, which is a component. So this is what is happening in React. That's the basis of it, that we have components. But otherwise, you still can use a lot of effects, a lot of patterns. So one of them is dependency injection, like where you inject the dependency from the outside. So I wouldn't say that React is not based on OOP. It doesn't follow it. It doesn't completely... it does not follow the style of the old school OOP programs, but it is still object oriented, I will say, to a biggest extent. And the solid principles apply fully to it. And yeah, so you can totally use them and apply them there. Can you use Python Flask with React? Yeah, I don't think there are any problems with that. For instance, here we use Django. Like it's not a problem. All the React components are mounted to a Django app, essentially. So it doesn't really matter what is on the backend. You can integrate React with Ruby, Flask, Werkzeug. It's another little Python framework. Works with everything. How do you recommend creation production builds of React apps? I have had difficulty with creating builds that are easy to install, deploy. Production builds of React apps. I cannot answer this question. I need more specifics. I don't really understand what were your struggles exactly. When making component that have functionality and style, do you put it in folder or what structure you use? As I saw, you have just files in components folder. Yeah, that's what I was talking about when I talked about application structure. For example, if I would be using CSS styles here, and I would have a CSS module, for example, for cart widget. It would be in the cart widget folder. So I tend to put everything separated not by the type of the thing, like the type of the file, be it JavaScript file, the React component, or CSS file. I just put them, grouping them by functionality. So if I have something related to cart widget, everything related to it, CSS, SVG in this case, component itself, the tests, everything goes into this folder. What about feature slicing for file organizing? Could you please elaborate? What do you mean? What is feature slicing for? Is it what I'm talking about? Because by the name, it sounds like that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like when I'm slicing the things by their features. Like this is the page, this is another page, and so on. Like this is a component on the page, or actually in shared. Anyway, what programming languages are in your stack? I know Python, and I currently program Python at work. I used to program on Ruby, mostly Ruby on Rails. JavaScript, of course, TypeScript. I think maybe, I hope, I don't know, maybe I still remember Objective-C. I wouldn't say that it's in my stack now. But I really like, my favorite right now is TypeScript, for sure. It's great. Then goes JavaScript. I also really like it. I liked Objective-C. It was easy to comprehend. It had very small API, semantic surface, if it makes sense. So you don't have too many things to remember. And my least favorite, I think Ruby goes sort of at the same level as JavaScript. I like both almost equally. Even though I don't use Ruby these days. But I really don't like, I dislike Python. I really don't like it. First of all, because of the way, my main complaint about Python is that it's kind of religious, that they say explicit is better than implicit. But joke's on you, if you start working with Django, a lot of things are pretty much implicit. Then it doesn't enforce and doesn't teach you how to test your applications. For example, testing the default testing library for Django is just horrible. The syntax is awful. You cannot group the tests. Like I like to group them in describe block, and it comes from our spec, and maybe it comes even from something else, maybe Smalltalk or something. But I really like being able to group my specs using describes. Then you have to use the function names to name your tests, and it's hard to read. It's way better. It looks way better when you have the it syntax. It does something. I like it way more. For example, in Ruby, they have this great convention that if library is named foo, the package is named foo, when you import it, import foo, you will import it from the package foo. Import foo from foo. In Python, it's not the case. So the package called foo can come from the library called bar or whatever. It's very annoying. You always have to check what is the export name from this library. Not very convenient. And yeah, I could rant for a while about Python. I don't like it. The mess with installing it, like right now you can install it by downloading the binary, you can install it through package managers, you can install it through pipenv, you can install it through pyenv, you can manually link different versions, and there is this incompatibility between Python 3 and Python 2, which is very confusing. It's very easy to screw up, and it's like there are a lot of articles how to do it properly, and some of them are even different and contradict each other. So I really don't like this segmentation. And overall, the quality of the libraries, I mean for web, in my experience, was lower. It seems like Python has a huge community, but it's by the big part, it's because students use it, it's because researchers use it, it's because data scientists use it, and so on. So I don't think the Python web community is as strong if you look only at that, because yeah, Python community overall is huge. It's on par or maybe even bigger than JavaScript community, but it's very segmented. So almost all the JavaScript community is web development. And what I like about it is it's a lot of people, a lot of smart people among them, and so we have good tools. In my opinion, totally not the case for Python. Seems like there are not enough people to produce good quality of libraries and infrastructure for Python for web specifically. What else? Hi Maxim, I'm Narayan. Any suggestions for learning Redux? I feel extremely difficult. Yeah, what is your reason to learn Redux? I would recommend not learning it if possible, because it is another revelation for me. I don't like Redux either, to be honest. Problem with Redux is that even though it is like immutable and so on, and functional, and it's easy to test, and blah blah blah, and yada yada, which is good. I don't argue with that. Problem is that, for example, when you have a situation when two parts of your store, two parts of your reducer, two different reducers, two reducers in your store need to share some data, it might be cumbersome to do this. It is not impossible, and it's not too hard, but you have to think not only about the problem at hand, but you have to also think how to do it in Redux. It doesn't suggest you a good option how to solve this problem. So to be honest, I really like MobX. I don't like how the MobX React or MobX React MobX React Lite integrates it. I don't know, maybe I should use some little demonstration. So problem is that unlike other hooks, where you call the hook to get the values from it, MobX React requires you to wrap the return statement of the component into use observer, which is confusing and might cause architectural, on the level of component, architectural problems using other hooks. So you might need some value from some other hook along with the use observer, and it can be confusing. So that's what I don't like. But overall, MobX is very nice to use, especially after MobX 6 is out, so you don't even have to use decorators anymore. Also, when I was doing this little tutorial on how to make Minecraft using React, I found this library called ZooStunt. And I think it's really great. It's really easy to understand how it works, really easy to follow, so I recommend looking at this. Otherwise, if you really need to learn Redux, then well, do some projects. Try to repeat what they have in documentation. Like I think they have a to-do app, or maybe even tic-tac-toe. I don't remember. I think they have to-do application. Learn by practice. Can you say more about the course you're working on? What technologies does it concern? Yeah, I can tell you about it. It's still in the process. It's gonna be in Russian. I'm gonna translate it later to English, but for now it launches in Russian. I think it's 1st of November or 8th of November when we're gonna launch it. So it's gonna talk about using React. My perspective on it is that a lot of courses teach you how to use specific technologies, and they're kind of disconnected from the practice, because you don't learn technologies, or you shouldn't learn technologies for the sake of it. It's good to dig deep when you are using your tool to know well what can it do and so on. But the main goal is to produce value. Like, why do we learn React? Is it because it's fun? Some people do it because it's fun, but we do it to be hired, to get hired, to work on some interesting projects, to get paid eventually. And to be able to be hired, we need to produce value and provide it to your employer. And your employer is a company that is doing some business and earning money. So we need to help business to earn money, and this is not always, it is not based on technology, it is based on what exactly are you doing, what features do you implement. So in my course, I'm focusing not on specific technologies, even though I teach specific things, like I teach Redux in this course because it's popular, even though I don't like it. But if you can read Russian, then good for you, but I will just read it in English. I focus on specific things that you need to do in React. So for example, you need to know how to work with forms. You need to know, and there I'm going to be talking about React Hook form. You need to know how to work with internal state, with data inside your application. You need to know how to work with the server. You need to know how to work with styles. You need to know how to implement navigation. You need to know how to localize your apps and how to authenticate. And as you can see, I'm not listing specific libraries there, even though I'm going to be using the examples with specific libraries. This is not the main point. The main point is to teach how to implement this kind of functionality, be it navigation, styling, authentication, and other things. So it's functionality-centered course, if it makes sense. What programming language hey Maxim, just joined. I'm really confused on starting with testing with React and JS. What would you prefer and roadmap? I actually have a bunch of videos on testing where you can just search for it on my channel. I already explained a big portion of my approach of how I do it. I hope this will help you. I'm learning building full-stack React Express apps, but I spend so much time building the APIs and would like to focus more on React so I can get a job faster. Could you recommend me some service? Yeah, totally. Try using Firebase, or there are alternative, even open source services, but I think Firebase is the most popular and well supported. And you can even land a job where you will need Firebase skills. And I have a few videos on my channel how to build Firebase React applications. Actually, one of my most popular videos, which got, I think, 50,000 views. I think the majority of my subscribers come from the video about React Firebase authentication tutorial. One request, Maxim, is it possible to make videos on React router hooks, like use history, use params, etc., etc.? Yeah, I could record another video about React router DOM and talk there about the hooks. But what is your concern? What is hard about them? Why would you like to see this kind of content? Thank you for reply on testing. I've actually started unit testing using Jest and Enzyme using shallow rendering. Could you please advise, should I continue with Enzyme or start with RTL? I totally advise starting with RTL. If you use shallow rendering and you already got used to it, it might be hard to switch because it's a drag, but it's going to be useful. The problem that shallow rendering solves is that it allows you to render only the immediate layer of component, only the component itself and not its children. So you don't test too many things at once. In React testing library, it doesn't have such kind of rendering. It always renders the whole tree. So if you render the component, it will render all its children. And it's actually good. So if you want to limit your test to a particular component, okay, I don't think we need this screen anymore, to a particular component, then you will have to manually mock all the children. But it is actually good because your test will be more clear and it will be easier to understand your intent. So yes, I recommend switching to React testing library. Does Django REST API asynchronous by default? I don't quite understand what do you mean here. And I've accidentally scrolled too low. Wait a second, guys. Yeah, sorry, Christian, I didn't understand your question. What do you mean by Django REST API being asynchronous by default? I believe that yes, if I understood correctly, but I'm not sure. If you could elaborate, it would be great. Which one do you like, Django or Node.js web frameworks? I like Node.js and I like Express.js framework because it has very small semantic surface, semantic footprint. You might have noticed that I've mentioned this term that I've just invented a bunch of times. And what it means is that its syntax is very small. It provides you with a few but very versatile tools, and you don't have to learn a huge set of things. The documentation can be very small, and then you expand on it and you build on this thing. So Express is very easy to understand. It's basically, it's pretty much like the rack in Ruby, the rack framework, where it has middlewares. So basically you build a stack of functions. Each of them receive the request. Let's imagine that it comes from the top. So your application gets the request, then first middleware processes it and maybe returns the response immediately. Or maybe it passes it through to the next middleware, next middleware, next middleware, and each of them can either take the data from the request, maybe take some data from the database, do something useful and pass it through to the next middlewares, or just return the response. It's very simple to understand. That's it. That's the whole fuzz around Express. And in Django, they have sites, they have apps. It is not clear what should you put into an app. They have huge documentation. They actually poorly written, in my opinion, because, for example, if you will read about, what is the latest example? If you read about how to use URLs. So, for example, each app can have its own set of URLs. By default, it's going to be using specific file, and it's not written how to substitute it. And it lacks good examples there. So main problem for me with Django is that it's complex. It seems like they have thought, it's kind of Angular kind of approach where they created a framework with some mindset of how should it solve your problems, how should you use it. But then they don't teach you how exactly should you use apps, sites, and so on. I've read a good book which I can recommend if you need to write Django applications. It's a scoop of Django, a good scoop of Django, a big scoop of Django. It's something like with an ice cream on the cover. This book does a great job explaining how to use Django in a non-painful way, but still, I really prefer Node.js and Express rather than Python and Django. I see mentors like you do use some really cool packages, but I really want to know how to find those. To be honest, I don't like to use too many different packages, and I was talking about it earlier during this call about the reasoning. I'm not trying to use the shiniest, latest libraries. I'd rather wait and use them when I have reason, because usually it has some cost. And before I really know how does this package work, or I'm sure that it's needed, I'm not gonna introduce it. Like, it's always an equilibrium of the value and the cost of learning something, finding out that this package actually has some problems. So it's good to keep your eye on different libraries, and if you see that something new popped up, maybe try to make some demo project, but I wouldn't recommend jumping on the train immediately. Do I have to separate tests from production build? I don't quite get the question. The tests should not be included into the bundle. That's true. Yes. You'd have UI for common UI components like card, and then in features product card would be a more concrete feature-related card component. That's probably about the feature sliced. Okay, I don't think I like it. Could you, Freefall, could you provide an example, maybe a link of what you're talking about? Maybe if you're in the Discord server, you could add it to the links channel. I would really like to learn more about this. I'm not sure, like from the first glance, I don't seem to like it, but maybe I should just learn more. Set state and class component had callback, but useEffect hook doesn't have that callback. Can you talk about how to perform action only after useEffect completes execution. So the thing about useEffect is that it executes either on mount, and the return function executes on unmount when it has an empty dependency array. But otherwise, if it has dependencies and you list them in the array, then it will execute every time it changes. So if you want to do something only after useEffect completes execution, it should be in the end of the callback in this useEffect. Since what age did I start learning English? I've started learning it since 4 years old, but then I went through the courses from Skyeng a few years ago because my English was still quite poor. Does snapshot test in React components increase my test coverage in coverage tools like Sonar? I don't know. I don't use coverage tools. We use them in Battlefield, and there we just try to not lower the coverage. We weren't focusing on covering it 100%, and it might be very hard to, and it's hard and not necessary to have 100% coverage. And I would advise against using snapshots mindlessly, because usually they don't provide as much value. They're very easy to write, they're very easy to create, but then unless you really do it intentionally and you create something after thinking, do I need a snapshot test here? They just become a pain in the ass, and you will very soon learn how to ignore them. You will just, every time the test fails on snapshot, you will just run jest -u and boom, everything is updated, something failed, who cares? So I would use them very cautiously and overall try to avoid them unless it's a good case. Context replaced Redux for me. Yeah, context with hooks, great solution, very simple. I like it as well. Can you give some suggestions on how to search and get freelance project after learning decent amount of React and Firebase? Unfortunately, I don't have enough experience with freelance to really give you a good advice here, but I would try to, for example, I have a YouTube channel and I have a blog. So from time to time, I have people reaching out to me asking to participate in some project. So it seems like it's a good strategy to build some online presence. Otherwise, you won't have any competitive advantage, and you still have to compete on platforms like Upwork and such. So I think a good advice there would be to build your own network, and having YouTube channel and blogging helps. Even though I don't do freelance right now, I still get requests. So it would probably help you as well. Video on React Query SWR if you haven't done it one yet. No, I haven't done it. I would like to learn about React Query. It seems like a good idea to separate the data that you have to synchronize with the server from the data in your state that is your application only. So I really want to learn about it more. Yeah, thoughts about React Query. Yeah, I need to learn more about it, but on the surface, the idea seems very good. I really like it. Do you use Material UI? To be honest, I only use it in my tutorials, and only because a lot of people request it. I don't really like Material UI because if you look at the source code, it's not very high quality, and they are very opinionated. They force to use all their kind of tools, and sometimes their components are quite complex. So I would probably use a custom set of components. I would develop if I would start some project. I would either use, what would I use actually? I don't know. Very likely that I would just use a custom set of components using styled components. Maybe, yeah, I'm pretty sure, or maybe not. I watch your Machin Nagar online. I watch your video. That's great. Please shout out. A Redux tip: use Redux Toolkit. Yeah, it's a great tip, or easy peasy, which I had a suggestion in one of my comments, and I checked it out, and it seems like it's another cool wrapper around Redux that really simplifies working with Redux. So it's a great tip: Redux Toolkit or easy peasy. Would you rather use context in whole projects or Redux? I feel Redux is much stable, not use context too much. Can we talk more about state management for React? I would probably try to use context for as long as possible, because Redux requires you to think about a lot. It brings a set of problems with itself, where you have to think about stuff that you wouldn't, that are out of the scope of your immediate task. So if you're working on something, if you implement it in Redux, you have to know how to think in Redux way to solve it properly. With context, it's easier. You have lower cognitive demand for it. Sorry if my question was not descriptive enough. What technologies do you use for building a deployable React app? Webpack. We build a bundle and then we upload it to, and then we do it on CI, continuous integration server. We use Jenkins, and then it uploads it to the CDN. Hi Maxim, does it possible to use libraries like Three.js and integrate them with VR glasses for phones? As far as I know, Three.js supports VR. I might be wrong because I didn't write VR applications, but I think it is possible. Probably it's not very practical for phones, but I don't know. Depends on your use case. Have a hard time finding information how to create an actual production-ready deployable build of React apps. I have been able to produce builds using Webpack, but it feels messy. Yeah, Webpack. The problem with Webpack is that it's declarative. And it works sort of like a black box. So you describe a list of settings, and then you hope that it will build what you want to build. It would be really cool if it would be more a pipeline-like, where you stack the processors, and you could put some sort of logging between the steps. But yeah, it is hard to work with. It's true. So good luck with Webpack, or maybe you could just post your config in the help channel in Discord, and we could discuss how can it be improved, or maybe everything is fine there. Is it the only problem that you have, the Webpack, or something else? Why do you use Brave and not Google Chrome? I just like to try different browsers. It's not that I really use Brave only. Like right now it's Brave, before that it was Firefox, before that it was Chrome. So I just like to try new things. Hey Maxim, have you ever heard about Magento? Yeah, I've heard about Magento. It's something for online stores, right? Hey, just joined, what's on the screen? I'm not sure what was on the screen back then. What is the difference between Mobex, Context and Redux? They all try to accomplish the same thing, right? Yeah, but in a very different way. So context is just a way to share the data between a bunch of components. So instead of passing through passing the data through the props down your component tree, you wrap the whole tree into context, and then they have the access to the values that you pass through this context. And then you have to write your own hooks or Hydro components to get this data out of context. And actually, Redux and the Mobex, they use context internally to propagate the data. Difference between Redux and Mobex is bigger because they have completely different approach. Redux uses one store per application, and the store is written as a reducer. It's a pure function which works like this. So it passes the previous state and the past action, and the action there is an object, kind of like, you can think about it as of event object, describing the type of event, the type of action, and the payload, the data that is associated with it. And then it goes into this reducer function, which takes the previous state, the action, and then it makes the calculation of the new state using this action. That's the approach of Redux in short. Mobex uses a completely different approach, where you can have as many stores as you want. You can combine them like you want. A good example of how I do it if we go to maximivanov.com, and there I had, oh my god, yeah, I think Ethereum, CryptoKitties clone, yeah, I have a bunch of articles. And the front end here, it's quite outdated, but still it shows the approach that I use here. Module export, no, that's not it. Ethereum network, using the contract. Yeah, okay, so this is the store in MobX. It's basically an object. You create a class, and then you specify the initial values. Here I have a dependency on another store, the contract store. This is how you do it. You can inject it from the outside, and then you can specify the functions, and you can also specify the values that are stored here. So it's easier to think about, in my opinion. You have objects that have properties and that have actions, which are functions in this case. In MobX, actions are functions that change those values, and you have getters that allow you to get the values from the store. I think it will be better to wait for the V6 of React Router DOM and talk about the different APIs it provides. Yeah, why not? How you build the Battlefield and Minecraft launchers with React? You use something like Electron. So in Battlefield, it was not the launcher that I was building. In Battlefield, it was actually in-game UI. And there, along the game, along with the game source code, it was also running the JavaScript Core.js. It was running the Core.js, which is a JavaScript engine that was actually executing React internally. And then it was rendering the UI right on the screen. So maybe I could show you what I was doing there. Battlefield V, and I remember that I was working on Armory screen. So for example, this stuff is written in React here in game. Yeah, this is what I was doing actually. This stuff is also React. So there it was a custom renderer that was taking React nodes and rendering them into the game UI. So it's not the launcher. In Mojang, I'm working on web, but there is a team that is working on launcher, and they use, yeah, something like Electron, but not really. It's something like browser, but different technology, not Electron, some other stuff. Nikita Kabergin, can you show your VS Code preferences and plugins? I believe a lot of people would be curious. Yeah, I could. I don't use too many VS Code plugins, to be honest. The most used plugin by me is Vim plugin, and another one. Let's see, install extensions, and another one is Jest, which allows you to run tests in line. So that if you look at this GIF, I hope it will do what I expect. Yeah, you see this green circle. So it automatically runs the tests, so you don't have to launch them in a separate console. You just see the result in line. That's it. I don't use too many extensions, just Vim and Jest. SVR or React Query? I don't know what is SVR, to be honest. Can I get a link to the Discord? Yeah, sure, no problem. I'm gonna post it in the comments to this stream, I guess. So yeah, not in the chat. I've posted the link, not in the chat, but in the comments section of this stream. What would you recommend for a large React app that has some performance issues? At the moment, I'm converting class components to function components and working on reducing re-renders. Yeah, reducing re-renders is a good idea. I would try to isolate the parts that I'm working with and try to see what exactly is causing time consumption. Maybe I don't use tools too much. You can use React debugger, but I would personally, I'm not very proficient with it, so I would probably just record timestamps between different points in code and see how much do they take to execute. So yeah, try to isolate the problem. That's the advice here. What do you think of Chakra UI? I don't know any other alternatives. So Chakra UI is a layout system that is used in React Native, and it was used in Battlefield as well. I don't know what else can you use in this case. So it's fine. Chakra UI, it's different. I've confused it with Yoga layout. Chakra UI. No, I didn't work with Chakra UI. I only have seen Tailwind. The idea in Tailwind is that they provide you a set of classes. Each of them represents a specific CSS property. I think it can speed up your workflow if you like it. Personally, I prefer semantic class names. So I would either use the CSS framework that, I don't know, to be honest. I'm leaning towards writing my own set of CSS rules, to be honest, instead of using something like Tailwind, and then having meaningful names for the classes, or even using styled components. Not sure if I like Tailwind. I framed the question wrong earlier, so I'm going to ask again. The class component has set state with a callback. Set state obtained from use state doesn't have callback. So how do you manage it? Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Okay, set state obtained from use state doesn't have. It has an option to be called. You can use the callback based set state with hooks as well, if I understood you correctly. So it's just not true. You can use callback based state updates with hooks. Hello, question is, your React TypeScript book from Newline already complete? Yes, the book is already complete. Can you please create React projects so that we can do some real-time practice? Yes, maybe some other time, not today. Global state. Personally think people overthink state management a lot. Once you use tools like React Query and separate server state to UI state, you will see you don't need a lot of global state and or wherever global state is left, context is just enough. I think I more or less agree. I haven't tried the React Query. I maybe will try it this weekend. Maybe I will even record a video about it to tell you guys what I think about it. Let's see. Thanks a bunch, your insight has been very helpful. Yeah, I'm glad. Do you have experience with React.js and Pusher with Java Spring Boot backend? Can you say something to that? Nope, unfortunately, I have not. What you do on this channel is really awesome. Your content really helped me a lot. I just want to thank you, sir. Huge respect. Thank you. I'm really happy to hear that. Can you please publish some videos about Downshift, React Window, and React Virtualized? I actually have a video about React Window. If you haven't watched it before, you can look it up on my channel. What would you like to know about them? Would you like to see a comparison or what exactly? Like maybe some specific use case. It would really help to record the video if I would know what to focus on, so it wouldn't be too generic. Do you have experience with React.js and Effector.js? No, I don't think I've heard about Effector.js. I'm loving the live stream. You're taking time out to answer viewer questions. Yeah, thank you. That's what I do. That's not Chakra UI, bro. It's a UI library. Yeah, that's what I understood. I've confused it with yoga layout. How is Redux in 2020 for medium-sized applications? Yeah, we've discussed something like this a bit earlier, that in 2020 you want to use a wrapper. So either you use the recommended way, Redux Toolkit. Actually, Redux team now recommends using it, and then it simplifies a lot of things. Try it out. Or you use another thing that is also a wrapper around Redux, which is easy peasy. Okay, it's kind of bizarre. It's like, you know, that library called Celery that is also hard to find. Easy peasy Redux. Yeah, here you go. That's another library that allows you, that simplifies creating stores and overall working with Redux. So try it out. How to set up React with Firebase to give personal information for each user, like the tutorial where you had CRUD up using Firebase, where you can edit, delete, add. So when you will have to combine two of my tutorials. So one where I authenticate, and then you can get the ID of the current user, and then using this ID you will be able to search in the database the records that are related to this particular user. So just combine two of my videos together and it should work. How do you structure your Redux files? Let me remember if I have something to show. Maybe I have something, maybe not. Overall, I structure them using the same approach as they have shown with the React files. So I group them by the functionality that they represent. Let's try to find it in the book examples. Where are we? Full stack management code. Less first step piano Redux. Okay, CD for Redux. CD completed code. Okay. Okay, it doesn't look too organized. CD step 8. What do I have here? Okay, I have modules, and each of them represents a specific part of functionality. For example, I have current stroke. It's a drawing application, somewhat like I was showing you in one of my videos, how to write a drawing application. Where is the browser? Here it is. Where is the book? So here is kind of the same application, but more complex, where you have undo, redo functionality, and you can pick different colors and so on. So yeah, I store the current stroke. It's one reducer. Here's the slice. I'm actually using the Redux Toolkit here. So that's an example of Redux Toolkit. Then I have a history index. That's another slice. Then I have models, where I want to show and hide windows. And then I have projects list, where I can load different projects. So you see, I just split the modules by the functionality. So I hope that's the answer. Will there be a Russian translation for the book? No, there won't be, but there will be a course about React that will be in Russian. Oh, you're writing a book? That's sweet. I'm not. Yeah, I'm writing another one right now, but the book about React with TypeScript is already written, and it's kind of cool that I have matching background right now, just like this book. Yeah, it's completely finished. For React sites, do you prefer Next or Gatsby? My blog is written in Gatsby, and it was very painful to migrate it to every version that was released. I had a lot of problems every time, so I probably didn't like it. I haven't tried Next, but my friend tried to write his blog using Next, and it was also quite painful. So I'm not sure if I even like the idea of React-based sites nowadays. The use case in Mojang that we have is a backend application with a bunch of separate React apps on top of it. So it's very different. So it really depends on the site. Cannot say what I prefer. I think they're equally flawed, both Next and Gatsby. What a junior React developer should know in general. Well, I would start with reading the docs, because they're not too big and they're written quite well. They have a lot of examples. That's what I like about them. And then try to build some kind of applications that would be close to what you can see in reality. Maybe some configuration tool or something like that. There are a lot of tutorials out there on React, but there are very less projects on modern React. It would be great if you start creating React projects. I'm thinking about creating React versions of React clones of different services, like let's say, I don't know, Hacker News clone, or maybe like Spotify clone or something like this, using React. I think this is the useful way to learn stuff. Try to reproduce some existing project using React, and this is a good way to learn. What strategies with Firebase to use when you want to minimize reads to Firestore while also trying to keep data up to date? I'm not entitled at the moment to answer this question. I will have to learn more about this myself. It's a good question on how to optimize using Firebase, but unfortunately I cannot answer it today. What do you usually use as an HTTP client? How do you handle canceling ongoing API calls when the component is unmounted? Right now I'm using just fetch, and I don't cancel the calls when the component is unmounted. I just didn't have such use case yet. So basically make collection with user IDs and have nested collection with DB for each user. Maybe I would just have a key by which you could look for the user, for example. Did I miss the link to the Discord? Would love to join. The link is in the video comments. So below this stream right now, not in the comment section, but below the stream, there is a link to my Discord. This is there is the only one comment right now. Will you make more tutorials about React 3 Fiber and other related packages? Yeah, if I will have some good idea on what could I do with Fiber. I had only one to create Minecraft using it, but otherwise I'm open for suggestions. If you have good idea what could be cool, then let me know. Hey Maxim, just wanted to give a shout out. Your content rocks and has helped me out a lot in little side projects. Also, what's your favorite beer? Thank you so much. What's my favorite beer? I can say that I have a favorite brewery. It's in St. Petersburg, and it's AF Brewery. They have a lot of beers. Like last time I was there, they had guava worms. I think it's a fruity kind of beer. Overall, I like sours. I really like sours, like lemon sours, whatever. Every time I go to some bar, I either order a sour or a lager. I have to mention your mic is awesome. I can hear all the sounds. I hope it's good. I hope you don't hear the saliva clicking. How do you choose between learning React or Vue? So about Vue, I think it's a great framework if you want to work only with only with web. It's not as versatile as React, but it provides a very beginner-friendly and very expandable kind of scaling platform for you. So I think it's great, but it's not as versatile as React, because using React you can write whatever. Even in my book I wrote a console-based application. I have another example of console-based Snake game on my channel. You can write game UI like in Battlefield. You can write desktop applications. You can write mobile applications. Even though a lot of people don't like React Native, still it's a very cheap way to develop apps. Though you would have to know some of native iOS or Android programming, but not as much as if you would write a completely native program. So React is more versatile. This is why I choose React over Vue. Have you tried Svelte? How do you like it compared to React? I think the idea behind Svelte is fantastic. Again, same as with Vue. It's very easy to use. Svelte also has very low footprint. It's kind of the disappearing framework where you don't have the Svelte bundle being served. But again, if you imagine you're a big company, and a lot of companies already have their apps written in React. It's quite expensive to migrate to it. So I think it's good that we have different frameworks, and it's great that the industry is moving in this direction. It's very interesting. I also like another framework that is kind of like Svelte, in a way that it's a disappearing framework that doesn't require a bundle searched separately, but it has more React-ish kind of API, and I like it as well. But again, it's not that. So I learned technologies that will make me hireable, employable, and React seems to be the best stake for now. Any React Native plans? Yeah, I would like to build an application, some more kind of real application, not like I did in my last video where I just showcased very basics on how to generate the bootstrap. Yeah, I'm thinking about creating something bigger. What would you pick if you would have to Redux or MobX? I would pick MobX, or maybe even stick to the context as long as possible before going MobX. You could use abort signal. I'm not sure if comments appear when the stream is ongoing. Okay, then I will just copy this. Oh my god, I'm gonna copy the link and add it to the comments. Copy, paste. I hope you can see it now. Is it possible to use stream for upload with encryption and chunk by chunk in React? React does not limit you on using any kind of JavaScript functionality that would be available without it. So whatever you can do with vanilla JavaScript, you can do in React as well, no problem. Maybe an interactive product display with R3F. Interactive product display, that's an interesting idea. But the tutorial would be quite short because you would just have to load some model. I will think about it. That's interesting. What's your thought of adding Microsoft App Insight to a React app? I don't know what is Microsoft App Insight. Some analytics platform? I use Axios and it's a pain to cancel the API. I will try fetch, I guess. Thank you for amazing videos. Can you please tell me how can we add images from CSS in Next.js background image? It probably would be a good make a good video on how to use Next.js with some demo. For example, I could show how to create a simple page with maybe a hero block with an image that uses an image from CSS. So if you would post it to video ideas, I would probably pick it someday and record a video about Next.js. Questions. What is this Svelte alternative with React API you mentioned called? It's Solid, just like Solid Principles, but the framework called Solid. Almost everyone that's looking for a React developer requires Redux knowledge as well. For how long you think Redux will be popular? Is it worth learning? Yeah, I've also noticed it. A lot of companies use Redux. There are a lot of fans of Redux. I think people bought this idea of being verifiably correct and like being like functional and so on. I think it will be popular for a long time, mostly because a lot of companies already invested in it. It's same with React. A lot of companies have invested. It's expensive to migrate to other technology, and even when React will, let's imagine that in a few years React itself will be unpopular and there will be another library that will pick up the pace. I don't think that the jobs will disappear the next day, because even now you can find the job position that require you to know jQuery or Backbone or some other outdated technology. So I think it's stuck with us for a long time. I have really been learning with your videos. Thank you, man. I'm really happy that you've learned from my videos. Thank you for the comment. Thank you so much for awesome content. Can you publish some videos about AG Grid React? AG Grid. What is AG Grid React? Can you please, Hardik, can you please elaborate? I don't know what is it. What do you think about React Query? We've discussed it a bit earlier this stream. I said that I did not try it, but I like the idea. I've heard about it in Twitter, and I think I'm gonna try it maybe during this weekend or maybe just soonish. So, okay, it's 8:30 for me. I don't know what time is it for you, and we've been talking for like 1.5 hours. It's been fantastic. What do you think about having another stream? Wait a sec. Let me see if I can do it. I was going to suggest to have another stream same time next Wednesday. Next Wednesday is 14th. What do you think about chatting again Wednesday, 14th of October? I think it could be great. It was really great to chat with you guys. Yeah, write in the comments if you would like to have another stream like this one. Maybe we could even have, I'm thinking maybe I could add another channel to Discord for stream questions where you could ask them in advance. Then maybe next time we could also review someone's code. That's another option. I think that's what I'm gonna do. So there is a link in the comments right now. I'm gonna paste it again. So join the Discord channel server. I'm gonna create a stream channel there, and let's discuss different ideas on how can we make it more useful. Maybe we are gonna review some open source libraries code, or maybe we will perform code reviews on your code if you send it, or something else. Just send the suggestions. So I think that's it for now. It was very good to meet you all. Happy to chat with you. And that's it for today. See you next Wednesday, same time, and see you in the Discord. Wait for it, I will create a channel in a minute or so. See you next time. Bye bye.